This year in the NFL, there were 8 head coaching opportunities with maybe 3 or 4 known candidates, which has led to, let's say, some unusual hires at head coach this year. So this week on Worst Take, we're going to rank all the head coaching hires 1 through 5. Let's do it. Let's start with the most famous name on this list, Bruce Arians, who took a job in Tampa Bay in spite of saying that he would only want to take a job in Cleveland, which is kind of weird. But he was also able to bring in Todd Bowles as his defensive coordinator, which I think is an extraordinarily smart move. I think Todd Bowles, while he wasn't the guy to be the head coach in the Jets, was given kind of a bad rap as a football person in New York. I think he's a tremendous defensive coordinator. I think that hire is going to work out really well. My only issues with the hire of Bruce Arians is that it puts the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a really weird place. And that place is the hiring of Bruce Arians makes you really dependent on the development of Jameis Winston, which 4 years into it has not gone well. And if Jameis Winston has proved anything in his short NFL career, is that he is not dependable. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he's not talented and able to have a breakout year. I'm just saying in 4 or 5 years in NFL, as a quarterback, you kind of are what you are. And Jameis Winston has proven to be a guy who can play well in moments, but can do stupid stuff off the field, can do stupid stuff on the field, and can cost you games. He's a more talented version of Blake Bortles, in my opinion. And the problem with Bruce Arians and Jameis Winston as a quarterback head coach match is that Bruce Arians has made it known that he wants to coach a winner. And that makes sense. He's 66 years old. There's no reason for him to come out of retirement to do a rebuilding project. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are honestly about 5 bad Jameis Winston games away at the beginning of the season from being a team that's going to tear it down and do a rebuild. Here's the thing, if you're a Bucs fan or if you're Tampa Bay, you kind of have to keep in mind, is that next year, the end of Jameis Winston's contract is going to be a really good year to get a quarterback in the draft. You're going to have Jake Fromm available, who's gone under the radar despite being the quarterback on one of the best teams in the country. You have Tua Tagovailoa, who's going to be available, who has been a Heisman Trophy finalist and has risen the level of play at Alabama. You're going to have the guy who was the consensus #1 quarterback in this draft at the beginning and the end of the season in Max Herbert available for next year. So you're going to have a really crowded draft. What I'm saying this for is that if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and this is not going right at the beginning of the season like you want it to go, you have no incentive to stick through the whole season with Jameis Winston. You have way more incentive to get rid of Jameis, to get any asset you can, and start the teardown in order to get that quarterback so you're not searching for him for 10, 15 years. And what is your 66-year-old win-now coach going to do when he suddenly realizes in October that the team is going for a rebuild? Will he stay there for 2 years? Will he retire in the middle of the season? Will he retire at the end of the season? And look, I like Bruce Arians, but not every situation fits every man. And I don't think this situation for Bruce Arians and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers makes a lot of sense because Jameis Winston is who we're betting on, and the year after his contract's over, it's an incredible rookie quarterback draft class. It just makes more sense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to start the rebuild next year and get their quarterback in a draft than it does to win now. So I'm going to give this hire 2 Kango hats out of 5. Now, the Green Bay Packers made the first new head coaching hire in the offseason when they brought in Matt LaFleur, the former offensive coordinator for both the Tennessee Titans and the LA Rams. And in what will become a tiresome theme in this video, he has a deep connection with Sean McVay. Now, of all the Sean McVay guys that got hired this year, I think his connection and his experience with Sean McVay is the most legit out of all of them. He was an offensive coordinator for 2 teams. He had some success In Tennessee, he had the 25th best offense, which isn't great. But with the Green Bay job, the real question is, how will he be able to work with Aaron Rodgers? Which really means, will he be able to just let Aaron Rodgers do his own thing on offense and just stay out of his way? And I think he can do that. So I'm going to give this hire 3 cheeseheads out of 5. The Denver Broncos actually did something interesting this year, and they bucked the trend. They hired a defensive head coach instead of plucking an offensive head coach, which, by the way, they're the only team to do it, and which, by the way, they're the only team to replace a defensive head coach with another defensive head coach. And the guy they hired is, of course, Vic Fangio, longtime defensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears. He's been a defensive coordinator in the NFL since 1995, so he's been in the NFL as long as I've been alive. So he has a ton of experience. He's very qualified for the job. I think fundamentally he'll be able to do the job very well. My big question and my concern with this hire is, this is the kind of guy you hire when you have an established quarterback, when you have a franchise guy already in line. This isn't the kind of guy you want to hire when you got Case freaking Keenum as your quarterback. And the reason that is because defensive head coaches tend to fall in love with guys like Case Keenum and Brian Hoyer and Josh McCown. If you look at their history of where they are, those quarterbacks have been in the NFL, you're going to find that they've been at a lot of places with defensive head coaches. Now, why do defensive head coaches love these kind of guys? It's because they're low risk, they don't turn the ball over, and they can manage a game. But the issue with that is when a defensive head coach gets a guy like Case Keenum, it's going to be the same situation that you saw with Case Keenum and Vance Joseph, where the offensive philosophy was way, way too conservative, where you're kicking a field goal when you're down 4 points at home, where you're not throwing the ball downfield, where you're not throwing balls over 20 yards. And now they're not going to have Gary Kubiak on the offensive side of the ball. So it begs the question, what is this offense going to look like with Case Keenum and Vic Fangio at the helm? And that worries me. And I would be worried too if I was a Denver Broncos fan. So I have no choice but to give this 2 John Elways out of 5. Oh boy, Colin Cowherd. Of course you love the Adam Gase hire because it's related to Sam Darnold and you're completely transparent. But let's actually talk about Adam Gase. But more importantly, let's talk about his reputation. Adam Gase is one of these guys in the NFL who have been given the nickname a quarterback whisperer. And if you're a Browns fan and you're watching this video and that title sounds familiar, it's because they gave that exact same title to Hugh Jackson. But let's really break down how he got this reputation. And the obvious answer is in Denver, when he was the offensive coordinator for Peyton Manning. Now, Peyton Manning played phenomenal under Adam Gase in Denver. I'm not going to take that away from him. But how much credit do you really give Adam Gase when it comes to coaching Peyton Manning, who has the reputation of being his own offensive coordinator? And if you look at what he did in Miami, he did improve the play of Ryan Tannehill, but it's not like Ryan Tannehill was ever playing out of his mind in Miami in the way that people kind of make it seem like, because if you ever look at anybody who says anything bad about Adam Gase in the comment section, there's always going to be somebody who says, well, he didn't have a healthy Ryan Tannehill. Well, why the hell does that matter? He's Ryan Tannehill. Come on. Like, he's going to be like a 20th best quarterback in the league, best case scenario. This is the guy they hired on paper. Hey, you got the guy who's a quarterback whisperer to work with your young quarterback and Sam Darnold. Makes a lot of sense. But to me, I don't think Adam Gase is the head coach that people think he is. I don't think he is the quarterback whisperer that people think he is. And I don't think quarterback whisperers exist because Hugh Jackson made me believe that. If you look at how the season ended in Miami, they crumbled at the end of the season. They had internal dysfunction at the end of the season, despite getting rid of guys like Ndamukong Suh and Jarvis Landry, guys who were thought to be known as bad character guys or bad locker room guys. They got rid of those guys to bring in good character guys, and they still had dysfunction in the locker room, which to me says more about the head coach than it does the players. So I'm going to give this hire 1 sad Colin Cowherd heads out of 5. Now, speaking of Adam Gase's old team in Miami, they hired Brian Flores, who was the de facto defensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. Now, there's not much to say about this hire because there's not a lot out there on Brian Flores. He is a guy who kind of grew up in the Patriots system. He's been there since 2004, I believe, and he's never been anywhere else. I'm going to give it 2 Ryan Tannehill heads out of 5. Okay, now we've reached a point in these head coaching hires where we're going to have to talk about the quote-unquote Sean McVay tree that was created this offseason. Now, while we can go into detail about how a dude who's just had 2 good seasons in the NFL is somehow now responsible for like 40% of head coaching hirings that's happened in the last 2 years. Spoiler warning, he coaches in LA. Everything in LA gets blown up for no reason. Before we get to the most ridiculous hire, let's get to Zac Taylor, who the Cincinnati Bengals hired. And Zac Taylor, if you've never heard of him, it's because he's the quarterback's coach for the Los Angeles Rams. But if you're somebody who's a Bengals fan or knows what the Cincinnati Bengals organization is ran like, he got hired for 3 simple reasons. 1, he knows Sean McVay. 2, he knew Mike Brown because he coached in Cincinnati in 2016. 3, he's a quarterback's coach, no offensive coordinator experience, so he's dirt cheap. Boom. That's why the Cincinnati Bengals hired him. 1.5 confused Hugh Jackson looks out of 5. So, if the Zac Taylor hire is somewhat premature, then what the Arizona Cardinals did was just outright bizarre, which is hire Kliff Kingsbury, who, may I remind you, was fired from Texas Tech earlier in the year. Why was he fired from Texas Tech? Was it because he went 35-40 as the Texas Tech head coach? He wasn't winning games. The Arizona Cardinals looked at all those statistics and said, this is the guy to lead us into the future. I don't think I understand the world we live in anymore. He had Patrick Mahomes, who is about to be the MVP, by the way, and he had future Heisman Trophy winner Baker Mayfield, both at Texas Tech, and he has never won more than 8 games. He's been bowl eligible twice at Texas Tech. He's been bowl eligible twice, and he has a NFL head coaching job. Kliff Kingsbury. If this doesn't say that hype can get you a job, I don't know what does. Here's another thing about Kliff Kingsbury. Both the guys we mentioned, Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes, are far more known and respected for the time they spent away from Kliff Kingsbury than the time they spent with him. So obviously, I don't think this is a good hire at all. Terrible hire. 1 Ray-Ban out of 5. Now, the thing about Freddie Kitchens is that, of course, it's a meteoric rise from running back coach to head coach. But it was a decision I think the Browns kind of had no choice in if they wanted to keep Freddie Kitchens with Baker Mayfield, because it seemed like those two had a genuine connection with each other. What I mean by that is that you couldn't hire Freddie Kitchens as the offensive coordinator, somebody else as the coach, and if you had a good year, you couldn't expect Freddie Kitchens to still be there at the end of the year. If you're the Browns, you had to make the decision early rather than saying what could have been late. And they went ahead and hired Freddie Kitchens. And the main reason of this is that offense did a tremendous uprise in the last 8 weeks. They credit Freddie Kitchens with a lot of the culture change that happened there. Instead of Greg Williams, which I thought it had a lot to do with Greg Williams, but we'll find out when the season starts, or at least when training camp starts, what the culture's like. And they fell in love with the personality of Freddie Kitchens and felt like he was the guy to bring the Browns forward and to continue this role. Now, a couple of things that Freddie Kitchens has to worry about is that now that it's bringing back more continuity, the expectations don't reset for this team. At the end of the year, I made a video where I said the expectations are playoffs, possibly playing a home playoff game, getting the AFC Championship. Those are the expectations for you in your first year, Freddie. So hopefully you're able to do it. Now he hired Steve Wilks as the defensive coordinator. I think it's a solid hire. You keep the 4-3, but you get a different voice in there. You get a younger voice in there. And you're going to be able to utilize different talents. I'm interested to see what he's going to do with the linebacker position, because that kind of was our downfall, at least when it comes to run stopping that the Browns had defensively. And then he brought in Todd Monken, who was the offensive coordinator with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on an interim basis, I think for like 15 games. And now he is the offensive coordinator for the Browns. So it's great that he has a guy who's had experience as an offensive coordinator, can do a lot of the heavy lifting for Freddie, but still allow Freddie to call plays. So that's going to be something that I think is going to be really positive for Freddie. I think he's been set up tremendously by the organization to succeed. Ultimately, the success of this hire is going to come down to the same exact reason that the hire happened in the first place, is the relationship between Baker Mayfield and Freddie Kitchens. It's essentially why Freddie Kitchens was hired, is because he has a great relationship with the franchise quarterback. And it seems like those two, that pairing is one of those pairings in the NFL that you want to have with your head coach and quarterback. Ultimately, it's going to be based on how those two, Baker and Freddie, perform and how well they do as the season goes on. I have tremendous faith in Baker Mayfield. I have tremendous faith in what Freddie Kitchens has done offensively. I have some questions about how that translates to a head coaching job. He does not have the experience, but as somebody brought up to me earlier, he does have a ton of NFL experience, which I think is important when it comes to leading a team and leading a group of NFL football players. I'm going to give this hire 4 bright orange dog pound hoodies out of 5. Thank you guys for watching the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Again, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And in the comment section below, tell me what you think of all the head coaching hires. What was the most ridiculous one? Which one do you think is actually going to be a sleeper? And if you disagree with me, tell me down there below. I love to argue. But again, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to see more videos like this, or me attacking Colin Cowherd and giving him what he deserves, then hit that subscribe button. Watch the Worst Take playlist. If you want to ask me questions that are sports related, follow me on Twitter at Quincy, where you can ask me sports related questions and I will respond for the most part. My name is Quincy Carrier. This has been Worst Take. Don't forget to subscribe.